All right. First of all, thank you everybody for joining us and for sticking around, and apologies for these technical difficulties. It was working just fine a few minutes ago. So first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Mutaz Abdelazim, and I focus on commercial and international business development for AI solutions for the FreeFlyer and Meridian software. Today, I'll be showcasing Meridian, which is our state-of-the-art next-gen flood ground system. Meridian is scalable, it's easy to configure, it's the solution that we've created based on our decades of experience doing operations for our customers, and we have that available now for users to easily configure and build a flood dynamic system and be ready for operations. Now, Meridian is built on top of FreeFlyer. It uses FreeFlyer as its core astrodynamics engine. Doesn't have any new capabilities. It's an interface, it's a modern architecture. And today I'm going to highlight the difference and how Meridian uses FreeFlyer and what's really unique about Meridian and how it can be useful for your current or upcoming flood dynamic systems. So with that being said, Mark, would you mind going to the next one? So FreeFlyer, as you're all aware, it provides end-to-end support for your full satellite mission lifecycle. You can use FreeFlyer for your mission design, your refine requirements, you can do analysis and trade studies. You can also integrate it in your ground system. You can build your entire flood dynamic system using FreeFlyer by script. You can script everything up from scratch. And a lot of people actually prefer that. A lot of people would like that flexibility to control everything in their workflow. Now, Meridian, on the other hand, it is more of a complete solution that is ready, that's easy to configure. So perhaps, Mark, can you go to the next one? Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, we built dozens of custom flood dynamic systems, and Meridian is based on that experience. It meets standard LEO and GEO requirements out of the box. So what do we mean by standard? For example, if you want to do rendezvous and proximity operations in low Earth orbit, that's not very standard, right? So that is not something built into Meridian at the moment. However, if you want to do propagation, generate ephemeris, or termination, and a lot of other things that you do daily in your everyday life as an operator, these are things that are built into software and can be easily configured. So we built a we use modern technologies to provide best interface for operators, for machines, and to streamline the integration process, and to also make it easy for you to track and trace any errors or problems that might happen. Now, Meridian can operate one single spacecraft, you can operate multiple spacecraft, you can operate spacecraft in LEO and GEO, so you can really control different spacecraft and have the ability to switch between them while using the same platform. Now, I would like to talk about FreeFlyer's heritage first, because as I mentioned earlier, FreeFlyer is the astrodynamics engine and has all of the algorithms that power Meridian. Mark, can you go to that slide? So FreeFlyer, as we've talked earlier, it has heritage of 25 years. We have been using it with NASA and our DoD customers, commercial and international stakeholders to operate spacecraft and all orbit regimes. Now, that heritage, these algorithms that operate all of these spacecraft, these are the same algorithms that are in the back end. They act as the brain power for Meridian. Now, FreeFlyer's capabilities, they include propagation, trajectory design, coverage and contact, maneuvering and targeting, orbit termination, optimization, terrain modeling, all of the things that we've discussed yesterday. So these are the capabilities that you can use in Meridian as well. Now, I will explain the differences between how you have FreeFlyer being used as an independent software and how it feeds into Meridian, but we're going to get into that in a few. Now, talking about FreeFlyer scripting, the powerful scripting language that we have, it gives you unlimited control of what you can do on the software. As I mentioned earlier, you can build script from the ground up. You can build your entire flood dynamic system and control everything in it. And this is also the case when it comes to Meridian. But with Meridian, you just get the interface, and we wrap up all of these scripts, the mission plans that we have wrote in advance, and we make it in a way that it's very generic. So you have a mission plan, you can write a mission plan for one specific mission. But since we've done this for so many missions, we've ended up writing mission plans that can easily be configured on the spot by the operator. So instead of you spending 6 months, a year, or 2 years writing everything up, you just spend a few weeks configuring what's already there. Now, I would like to talk about FreeFlyer's architecture before we start focusing on Meridian. Mark, you get to that slide?
Yep.
Thank you. So the yellow box that you're looking at here, this is the astrodynamics engine. This is the brain of FreeFlyer. This is the architecture of the software that most of you are using. You write mission plans, it has procedures, mission sequences, and you do that using a mix between the GUI and the scripting environment. You have flexibility to input data like TLEs, ephemeris, analysis data, different formatted files, and you can output visuals, commands, automation reports. So this is FreeFlyer by itself. When you use the software with any external resources, you have three options. Now we're going to focus on that bottom left one, the FreeFlyer runtime API. So ideally in operations, you don't want the operator to actually open FreeFlyer, have access to the script, because perhaps they can do something wrong, perhaps they can have some troubles that come through from that. So you want to build an external interface. Now you do that and it communicates with FreeFlyer using C, C++, C#, Java, and Python. Now the other interfaces, the universal interfaces and the extensions, these are useful for when you actually have FreeFlyer open and you're using it and you want to integrate it and work side by side with another tool like MATLAB or a custom tool that you have. But in operations, you really just want to call FreeFlyer to execute commands and to have it perform what it's expected to do. Now, next, I had a presentation, a demonstration prepared, but unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get to that at the moment. Perhaps we can get to it during the Q&A session. But let's move to the Meridian architecture and really see from what I just showed earlier, the FreeFlyer architecture, how that feeds in to Meridian as a whole. So looking at the graph on the right here, FreeFlyer is just part of much larger system when it comes to your cloud dynamic system. You have the database, you have the interface, in this case it's a thin client. You can use the browser to access FreeFlyer. You have the Meridian API, which communicates with the FreeFlyer API, and you have all kinds of automation and UIs configured for your needs. So Meridian provides you with all of that combined, not just the FreeFlyer mission plans, but the FreeFlyer mission plans with the interface, with the database. As you can see over here, the interface layer accessed by the operator by a browser. So you can log in from anywhere that's connected to the server using any kind of browser and just go ahead and do your day-to-day operations. You have direct access to other ground systems components by the API as well. So you configure Meridian and it communicates with your TTNC, with your scheduler, with whatever you have in your ground system. And when it comes to FreeFlyer as a COTS product, as I mentioned earlier, it's built by verified and validated algorithms that are being used by hundreds of missions. So we just wrap all of that together, a modern interface, a streamlined database, and automation feature, and that's what you have with Meridian. Now, perhaps Michael, would you mind, Mark, would you mind going to the next slide?
Okay.
Thank you. Now, Meridian is also built for scalability. You can use it to operate one spacecraft, to operate a few spacecraft in different orbits. And when it comes to licenses, you just need one license and you have it for your entire ground system. And you can keep adding spacecraft as you increase your fleet, or you want to add spacecraft that are already operational and have them migrate to your modern cloud dynamic system. So the Meridian components are stateless. This is what provides the scalability that I'm talking about. And the licensing is very flexible, and we're going to get into that later. The containers can be deployed on an individual node, and you can use a Docker Swarm, or you can spread it across VMs. And the UI, the database, the API, everything is deployed on Docker container as well. Now, when it comes to interfacing, now as an operator, your workflow is quite streamlined. You have you only access the information that you want. The administrator can set certain limits based on the operator and what their tasks are. You can easily review and regenerate products. You can choose between the tasks, the capabilities, and software, and go through them for each of your spacecraft, generate your products, and then filter through them and approve them as appropriate. When it comes to the machine-to-machine interface, you can ingest inventory and tracking data directly, and you can also generate products on demand and share them without operator interaction. So they have some automation. You can configure how to automate your flow dynamic system with Meridian. You can make it very operator-centric, or you can increase the automation however appropriate, however you feel comfortable with it. When it comes to messaging, these are just the examples that we have, but there are more options available. So it supports Guard Mission Services Evaluation Center, the GMSEC, which is now often referred to as C2MS message. And you can also send heartbeat and product notification messages. So as an operator, you can get an email with the notifications, and you can make whatever action, take whatever action appropriate based on that. Now, when it comes to core capabilities, Mark, if you don't mind.
Yep.
The capabilities that are listed here, these are all in FreeFlyer. As I mentioned, Meridian doesn't offer new flood dynamics capabilities. The algorithms, all of the test dynamics, it comes from FreeFlyer. So these are, as I mentioned earlier, these are the standard, day-to-day things that you would do as an operator. You would do orbit termination, propagation, generate orbit events, do orbit comparison. You have some automation, the messaging, and for maneuver planning. And when it comes, you want to do momentum unload. You're going to be deorbiting your spacecraft. So these are very standard things that you do as an operator for pretty much 90% of the spacecraft in orbit. Now, these are all configured in Meridian, and there are some features that we can add to that. So I'm going to explain the difference towards the end of this presentation. Now, I would like to familiarize you all with the maturity and where Meridian stands right now. Mark, if you go to this slide.
Yep.
So we are working with multiple stakeholders right now to use Meridian for their operation center, Landsat 8 and Landsat 9. As you know, they are a low Earth orbit EO spacecraft, and they have quite unique requirements. They're not just the standard EO birds, and they are using Meridian. Now, they've taken all of the existing functionality that we have, and there are a number of customizable features and interactions that are a requirement for their ground system and flow of operations. So we are working with appropriate stakeholders to configure Meridian, and it will be operational soon. We're doing the same thing with Sierra Nevada Corporation on the Dream Chaser program. As you know, it's a LEO cargo system for the ISS, and we're working with them for quite some time now, and it's going to be operational soon. We're going to get to talk about this later. And STPSat-6, which is a geo communications bird and has other payloads, it will be operational, I believe, in early 2021, and it will have Meridian as its primarily flight dynamic software. Now, as I mentioned over and over, this is all building on top of FreeFlyer's heritage, the algorithms, and the experience that we have as a company building different ground systems. So let's talk about licensing, because I'm sure a lot of people care about that and costs. Now, we built Meridian for two reasons. One of them is to significantly cut down the cost of building a flight dynamic system. So we understand that it can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and a number of years to build your ground system as you wish. Now, Meridian is made in a way where you just need one license for your entire location. It's per location for your server, and that license you can operate any number of spacecraft on it. It comes with perhaps 50 to 90% of all your flight dynamics needs. So you just need a small service contract to configure Meridian to do your day-to-day operations. Unless, of course, if you have something that is perhaps more demanding than other standard LEO or GEO spacecraft, then it might take a little bit of a longer time. But at the end of the day, when it comes to using Meridian plus FreeFlyer, you have a scalable out-of-the-box system that can be accessed by any number of people, that can be used for your upcoming missions and your current missions with a very small time to develop all of that. If I would give an example, you can get FreeFlyer and spend perhaps 1 or 2 years building your scripts from scratch, but with Meridian, you can cut that time by perhaps 4 times. You can make it in 6 months or less. You can have Meridian ready. You can go into operations, and as you increase your spacecraft, your fleet, you can do all of the work on your end without connecting or using AI solutions as a company that has to go in and implement these changes. So when it comes to configuration, now what can you do and what do we have to do? As I mentioned, and this is really something that is mission specific. Meridian, you can configure your spacecraft and your ground station parameters and your input and output data formats. And you have a lot of functionalities already there. Now, if these functionalities are not compatible with how you want to do operations, if you want to do maneuver planning in a different way, if you just have certain unique algorithms that you want to implement, now these are things that we would do on a service contract, and we can add them in Meridian on the back end and configure it in a short period of time and make that ready for you. Now, additional features can be like SSA, we have unique orbit termination measurement types, and we've had a lot of examples with that. Now, our goal and what we are working on at the moment is we want to make Meridian reach a point where you just have 90+% of everything you need for a flight dynamic system, and that service work would be very minimal. Now, depending on your mission, that might already be true, but in some cases it's not. Now, we can talk about this later and see where you would fit. Regarding approach options, how can you, so now I had a chance to, very briefly talk about Meridian and explain what it is as a concept and what you have and what you can do and what kind of work that's needed. Now, there are generally, when you are looking for a flight dynamic system, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to FreeFlyer and Meridian, you have three options. The first one is I'm comfortable with FreeFlyer. I have the people who are going to build everything from scratch. I've done it before. Let me do that again, and good luck with it. You have training, you have sample scripts, you have documentation, technical support. A lot of people are doing this, and we are here to help, and you can do it entirely on your own. Now, another option is to just use FreeFlyer and Meridian for basic operations, or I say basic here, but in reality, it might just be regular operations and you don't need anything else. You can just take Meridian, evaluate it, it fits what you're looking for, minimal customization needed, and you're ready to go. Now, that is an approach that we have had some people do, and after some time, they come with certain very specific and tailored requests for their flight dynamic system. Now, a third one is to just configure Meridian and FreeFlyer to meet exactly what you want. And that would certainly require a service contract, and there will be a lot of back and forth to really understand what you're looking for and what's in Meridian and what are the gaps and how we can approach them. So now, Mark, if you just go to the SNC Dream Chaser slide. So now I'd like to give you a case study. Now, as you've all heard, CERN Nevada has CERN Nevada Corporation. They have this great program, the Dream Chaser, and we've been working with them for quite some time, and they're using Meridian right now as their flight dynamic system together with FreeFlyer. So they found a lot of useful capabilities in Meridian, but of course, as you know, for ISS, for their specific mission, there are a lot of things that are not existent in the standard LEO or GEO day-to-day operations tool. So these things include ISS, the orbit opportunity analysis, communication coverage analysis for their specific needs, attitude history file generation using the UI user interface, launch window determination, and generating phasing maneuvers for the ISS docking. Now, are going to be included in their streamlined workflow, but as you would guess, this is perhaps a fraction of what all of the work would have been. So Meridian in this case was useful where it cut down the time that you would need from building everything from scratch to you have 70%, you have 50%, and these are the missing things, and now we're going to work with you on configuring them. So that's just a very simple way of summarizing how Meridian and FreeFlyer can be used for your system. Now, as I mentioned earlier, and I'd just like to summarize, and FreeFlyer, it's a tool, very flexible, has all of these scripting capabilities and algorithms, and you can use it to build exactly what you want for operations. Meridian is already built. It has the database. You can access it using the browser. It's a system of systems in a way, and you can integrate it as a flight dynamics system with your ground system with minimum effort. It's scalable and it's easy to customize on the user, but it would often requires some level of service contracts with AI solutions. Now for the next steps, Mark, if you go to the last slide. So usually the approach here is that you can get an evaluation license for Meridian. You can see the existing functionalities. You can evaluate FreeFlyer as well. You can simulate your flow dynamics system and compare between them. And then you would communicate with the technical support and the sales team and identify if there are any missing features that would need to be tailored for your mission. With that being said, I think we can take a few questions. We finished early because of the demo. And while we take Q&A, perhaps I'll see if I am successful in sharing my screen again. But thank you for your patience, and thank you again, excuse me for these technical difficulties that we had with sharing my screen. And yeah, I think that's all I have, Mark. So do we have any questions?
Can Meridian only work in LEO and GEO?
Yes. So as I briefly mentioned earlier, we just looked at standard flood dynamics, and from our experience, LEO and GEO, each orbit, I mean, there are a lot of variations in how you can do operations, but some things are quite standard. So we just focused on that for now. And we are right now working with one of our customers on a highly elliptical orbit as well, but it's still not at a point where it's standardized and it's so generic where you can just use it for all kinds of LEO missions. So right now we would just recommend that you focus on LEO or GEO with Meridian, and if there's another orbit regime that you want to work on, then you can use FreeFlyer for that, or we can do a lot of customization and have Meridian supported as well, but that would not be out of the box.
Okay. So we had another question. How can geo redundancy be addressed with Meridian? We're talking with our developers. We're not sure the breadth of this question, if it refers to having physically separate data locations where you would have your operations. They say, so since Meridian is hosted on a database, and FreeFlyer's engine is on the database, you can put it at separate locations and have the same login for the same mission. So yeah. Meridian's use of Docker allows us to expand configuration across remote locations.
Yeah, I think you addressed that very well, Mark. Yeah, that flexibility comes with architecture that we have from Meridian, and this is something that I believe our development team will have to communicate with the person who asked this question to understand exactly what their use case is and figure out an appropriate answer that perhaps is more in depth.
We just had another question come in. Does Meridian support orbit determination using azimuth and elevation measurements?
Yes. Now Meridian supports Meridian supports OD in a number of ways, and if you remember yesterday, Corey, he talked about FreeFlyer's OD capabilities, and these are things that already exist in FreeFlyer, and we've implemented them in Meridian as well. Hey Mark, so yeah, we got a question about using Meridian for visualizing large constellations. So I just wanted to address that and say, first of all, we have Friday, we're going to focus entirely on constellations, and we have a segment dedicated for how you can do operations using the cloud for a large constellation. So we're definitely going to get into that in some way. But for this question specifically, so Meridian is used primarily for your day-to-day operations. If you want to do constellation, if you want to do visualizing your large constellation, you can use Atlas, which is basically an application written with FreeFlyer in the backend purely for visual, purely to provide you insights in your ground system visually, and you can do a lot of hollow-grade visuals with Atlas. So that can definitely do large constellation visualization, provide a lot of insightful information for users, but that is not in Meridian. That would work hand in hand with Meridian. So we're going to talk more about how you can use FreeFlyer to operate a large constellation. That's a very important topic, and it's a hot topic in the industry, and we're going to get to that on Friday and talk about it in more detail.